James O'Brien. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
12:37 is the time, and I was a bit late coming off the back of PMQ, so I don't want to curtail Simon Marks' contribution to the programme any more than I already have. Here he is, State of the Union address. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think we have to start, James, with the understanding that to some extent, in order to appreciate the audaciousness of Donald Trump's play last night, the American public was required to suspend their belief in everything that they already know about his first term in government. But that some polling also indicates overnight that that may have worked for him. I mean, you will read that this was the longest speech in State of the Union history, and indeed at 1 hour and 47 minutes it was. But I'm bound to say, for at least this viewer, it felt much shorter than last year's speech, which was 1 hour and 39 minutes, because he was actually focused, he was disciplined, he was energetic. He barely departed from his prepared text. He was completely glued to the teleprompter throughout. And this speech was a masterstroke of theatrical diversion by a made-for-television showman who, last night at least, appeared to realise that his entire future and the future of the political movement that he leads is now on the line. And the most important piece of political theatre, you know, these speeches are normally not even remembered the morning after the night before. They are certainly never remembered a year after the last State of the Union address. I defy anyone that can remember what Donald Trump said last year or Joe Biden said the year before that. This speech will, I think, be remembered for a piece of political theatre where, on the issue of illegal immigration and what he claims was a completely open door border policy by the Biden administration, Donald Trump stood in front of the Democrats who were in front of him in the room, and remember that 80 Democrats, an unprecedented number, were boycotting the speech. But he stood in front of the Democrats in the room, and on live TV, he offered them this challenge.
So tonight I'm inviting every legislator to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself.
And he managed to goad at least two members of the Democratic caucus, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of Michigan and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, into screaming at him, in the case of Ilhan Omar, "You're the murderer, you're the one who should be ashamed." And this was exactly the outcome that he was looking for, revealing the Democratic Party to Americans across the country who went into this first year of his second term backing his plans for mass deportations, but have been deeply shaken by the manner in which his mass deportation policy has been implemented. He managed to use that moment of political theatre to reveal to the country that Democrats won't even agree that the duty of the American government is to protect American citizens first, a breathtaking claim by Donald Trump, given that 2 American citizens were gunned down by his federal agents in Minneapolis just last month. And he then managed to goad 2 of the most left-wing members of the Democratic Party's caucus, and of course 2 Muslim American members of Congress, into screaming at him, raging at him on television, and accusing him of being a murderer. And you're going to see that clip again and again and again in Republican image making as the midterm election campaign gears up and moves into a higher swing here.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because, of course, they weren't necessarily, well, they obviously weren't disagreeing with what he said. They were just refusing to be part of his theatre, and by doing so, they've become a much bigger and more effective part of his theatre than they would have been if they'd just sort of shuffled to their feet.
Yeah, but there were other moments as well where they did, I think, take the bait, and it was particularly when President Trump introduced to the audience one of his invited guests, a teenage girl who, and it's a long story, had decided that she wanted to transition to become a boy, escaped from her family. The family then sued the local school board in Virginia, managed to bring her back into the family home, and she then decided not to pursue the gender transition surgery. President Trump used this as an opportunity to advance his argument that no child in the United States should be allowed to change genders without parental approval and support. And there was a moment in the speech where again he challenged the Democrats to back the law, and they were not interested in it. And he said to the American public, they're crazy, these people. I'm telling you, they're crazy. He also made it absolutely apparent that, you know, if the Democrats are to return to power, he argued they're going to take the country back to a Biden-esque era in which inflation is going to soar, crime is going to be rampant on the streets of America. We'll be returning to an era of anarchy and disorder, you know, the carnage that he came into office in his first term threatening, pledging to fix. And then for the international audience, I mean, if we look at the elephant in the room, I mean, the elephant in the room was really symbolized by the 4 Supreme Court justices who showed up for the speech, 3 of whom had voted against his tariffs in that landmark decision last Friday that eviscerated the central pillar of his trade, foreign and international policies. Donald Trump seemed somewhat concerned. I mean, he said that the Supreme Court decision had been very unfortunate, but then he doubled down and indicated that, as far as he's concerned, the era of protectionism is simply going to rock on here.
As time goes by, I believe the tariffs paid for by foreign countries will, like in the past, substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax, taking a great financial burden off the people that I love.
I mean, an absolutely breathtaking bit of doubling down and repeating there the complete falsehood that the tariffs are being paid for by foreign countries. They're not. His own Federal Reserve issued data within the last 10 days saying that 90% of the costs of the tariffs are being passed on to Americans in the form of higher prices. But Trump indicated he's got no plans to seek congressional approval for any of this 15% across-the-board tariff that he's implemented, that the statute books suggest he can only implement for 150 days. He said he had tested and approved other legal strategies that were going to, other legal statutes, rather, that were going to allow him to keep tariffs in place. No answer, no clarity for any of America's trading partners about where all that is going, and absolutely no promise to America's importers, who have paid the $150 billion in tariffs that this government has collected, that any of them is going to see a penny of that money back anytime soon.
I mean, I know it doesn't matter, and we've reflected upon this many times, but I don't think in the States you can get gender-affirming surgery without parental support, without parental permission while you're under 18 anyway, anywhere. But it doesn't matter for his base because he's making them think that their children can run off and have operations against their will, and he wants
effective. And he wants to codify into federal law. I mean, he wants to make sure that, you know, for him, this is about tightening a loophole that really doesn't particularly exist. Yes. But it's mostly about creating a straw man that he is able to use very effectively. And, you know, if we look at the polling overnight, and we know that yesterday there were opinion polls showing that between 60 and 63% of the country disapprove of what Donald Trump's been doing over the last year. You know, whopping numbers. 73% of independent voters say they disapprove of what Donald Trump's been up to. Well, in overnight polling, CNN has found that 64% of people who watched the speech feel the country is headed in the right direction, and that number shifted over the course of the speech from 54% before to 64% by the time he had finished talking. Now, there are other elements in that poll that are not so welcoming for the White House. Only 38% of viewers had a very positive view of the speech by the time it was over, which Politico is reporting today is a lower score than Trump has registered in any of his previous addresses to Congress. But, you know, they will view this at the White House as the opening salvo in his efforts to try and not only bring Republicans across the finishing line in November, but in adhering Republicans to him. And I think that in some respects he did succeed last night. You know, the enthusiasm, the cheers for him when he made various announcements were, you know, you could hear them all over the city. I mean, Republicans could not, I think, believe that this president, the man who rambled his way through that endless, more than 2-hour press conference on the first anniversary of his return to power, only in January, was the same Donald Trump that had shown up last night in the well of the House of Representatives.
And he knows his base, doesn't he? He knows exactly what buttons to press, and as you say, he pressed most of them last night or yesterday. Simon, thank you. We'll probably catch up with Simon a bit more before the end of the week, maybe even a little bit more on that, but it's already 12:48.